The Valley of the Kings, a sun-scorched canyon, the final resting place for pharaohs of Egypt's new kingdom. The ancient Egyptians believed in an eternal afterlife, filling their tombs with treasures, but the lure of riches led to most tombs being plundered over centuries. By the early 20th century, one man, Howard Carter, believed there was still one more king waiting to be found. Tutankhamun, a boy pharaoh whose name had been all but erased from history. Carter believed Tutankhamun's tomb might have escaped looters. This became an obsession, a quest that would consume years of his life. The search was long and arduous. Carter refused to give up, convinced a discovery beyond imagination lay beneath their feet. The world in the early 1920s was a place of great change and uncertainty. The Great War had ended only a few years earlier, leaving behind a deep scar on the global psyche. Nations were rebuilding, but a sense of loss and disillusionment lingered in the air. People were searching for new wonders, for distractions from the grim realities of the recent past. It was an era of new technologies like radio and cinema, which could spread news and stories around the globe with astonishing speed. The public had a growing appetite for the exotic, for tales of adventure and mystery from faraway lands that could capture their imagination. Egypt at this time was also in a state of flux. It was officially under British protection, but a powerful wave of nationalism was sweeping the country. Egyptians were beginning to demand independence, to reclaim their own history and cultural heritage from foreign control. For decades, European archaeologists had dominated the field of Egyptology, removing priceless artifacts to museums in London, Paris, and Berlin. There was a growing feeling that the treasures of the pharaohs belonged in Egypt. This political tension created a complicated atmosphere for foreign excavators like Howard Carter. They were seen by some as heroes of science, but by others as colonial opportunists. Into this charged environment came the whispers of ancient magic and forgotten curses. The idea of a pharaoh's curse was not new. It had been a popular theme in fiction for years, tapping into a fascination with the occult and the supernatural that was common in the post-war period. People were drawn to the idea that the ancient Egyptians possessed secret knowledge, and that their tombs were protected by more than just stone and sand. These stories provided a thrilling sense of danger and mystique. They suggested that disturbing the slumber of the ancient kings could have terrible and unforeseen consequences for those who dared. This blend of scientific exploration, political tension, and public fascination with the supernatural set the perfect stage for what was to come. The world was watching Egypt. Newspapers were hungry for sensational headlines, and the public was ready to believe in the extraordinary. They were not just waiting for a discovery of gold and jewels. They were waiting for a story, a grand drama filled with adventure, mystery, and perhaps a touch of the unknown. The search for Tutankhamun's tomb was becoming more than just an archaeological project. It was turning into a global media event poised on the brink of history. The year was 1922. Howard Carter was beginning his final season of digging. Lord Carnarvon had agreed to fund one more campaign. Carter focused on a small patch of ground near the tomb of Ramesses VI. Then, on November 4th, a workman's tool struck something solid. It was the top of a man-made step. A full staircase began to emerge, descending into the darkness below. The staircase led to a sealed doorway, stamped with the seals of the royal necropolis. Carter sent a telegram. At last have made wonderful discovery, a magnificent tomb with seals intact. On November 26th, Carter, Carnarvon, and a small group stood before the sealed doorway, ready to peer into the darkness. They were about to unleash a legend that would captivate the world. Howard Carter began the digging season with a heavy heart. Years of fruitless labor had tested his belief. For 5 seasons he scoured the Valley of the Kings. His patron, the Earl of Carnarvon, was losing faith. The money invested had yielded very little. The pressure was immense. Carnarvon made it clear this would be the final campaign. It was Carter's last chance to find the tomb of Tutankhamun. Failure would mean the end of his dream. Carter decided to excavate a small area beneath ancient workmen's huts. It was a desperate final gamble. Carter supervised the work with a sharp, anxious eye, his reputation hanging in the balance. But Carter was persistent. He refused to be deterred. He felt he was close. He was convinced that 3,000 years of history were waiting. November 4th, 1922. A workman's tool struck something hard. A young water boy found a stone different from the rubble. It was a step, perfectly cut. Carter knew this was different. A staircase emerged, descending into the earth. The staircase was a classic feature of a New Kingdom tomb entrance. At the bottom was a blocked doorway covered in plaster. Carter recognized the official seal of the royal necropolis. It suggested the tomb might be intact. Carter knew he had to wait for his patron, Lord Carnarvon. Carter ordered the staircase refilled and covered. He sent a telegram to Carnarvon, setting in motion events that would capture the world's attention. After weeks of waiting, Lord Carnarvon finally arrived in Luxor, joining Howard Carter at the site. The team resumed clearing rubble, revealing a sealed doorway marked with Tutankhamun's name, proof at last. With anticipation mounting, they dismantled the first doorway, only to find a sloping corridor packed with rubble. Signs of ancient break-ins were discovered, dashing hopes, but a second sealed door soon appeared, also bearing royal seals. The robbers' tunnels ended here. Perhaps the burial chamber beyond was untouched. On November 26, 1922, Carter, Carnarvon, and a small group stood before this final barrier. The air was thick with dust and anticipation. This was the moment of truth. What lay beyond could change history, or shatter their dreams. The world held its breath. Carter carefully made a hole in the sealed door and peered inside, candle in hand. At first, he saw only darkness, then the glint of gold and strange shapes emerged. Lord Carnarvon asked, "Can you see anything?" Carter replied, "Yes, wonderful things." The antechamber was crammed with golden treasures, statues, and mysterious artifacts. The discovery was beyond imagination, a royal tomb, nearly intact. Stunned, the team realized they had found Tutankhamun. They resealed the entrance, overwhelmed by the magnitude of their find. But as they left, a new legend began to stir. The door to a legend and a curse had been opened. News of the discovery spread rapidly, igniting excitement and superstition. Local workers whispered of ancient magic and retribution for disturbing the king's rest. Journalists seized on these tales, weaving stories of a vengeful curse. Carter dismissed the rumors as nonsense, focused on cataloging the treasures. Carnarvon, more open to the mystique, saw the power of the story. The contrast between the pragmatic archaeologist and the romantic aristocrat fueled the legend. The world was captivated, not just by the tomb, but by the shadow of a curse. The stage was set for tragedy. Soon, reports claimed a chilling inscription warned, "Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the king." Newspapers spread the story, painting Carter and Carnarvon as reckless trespassers. Yet no such inscription was ever found. No tablet, no photograph, nothing in Carter's records. The famous line was likely invented by a journalist, but the myth took hold. The world wanted a curse, so it created one. Fiction became fact in the public imagination. The legend was now unstoppable, feeding on its own invented evidence. The curse had a voice, even if it was only a whisper from the press. British novelist Marie Corelli added fuel to the fire, publishing a letter warning of dire consequences for tomb violators. She claimed to possess an ancient text predicting illness and death for intruders. Her warning, coming from a respected figure, gave the curse new credibility. When Lord Carnarvon soon fell ill, Corelli was hailed as a prophet. Her ancient book was never produced, but it didn't matter. The public embraced her prophecy as fact. Corelli's words gave the curse an air of authority and inevitability. The myth was now anchored in both superstition and celebrity. The curse's first victim was Carter's pet Canary, reportedly eaten by a cobra, a symbol of pharaonic power. Locals saw this as a sign. The Pharaoh's guardian had struck. The story spread quickly, becoming a key part of the curse legend. The death of the Canary was seen as a dark omen for the expedition. The press turned a simple event into a supernatural warning. The public waited anxiously. Who would be next? The legend grew, and all eyes turned to Lord Carnarvon. The curse was no longer just a story, it was a looming threat. The first target of the curse was the man who made it all possible, George Herbert, the 5th Earl of Carnarvon. In March 1923, just months after the tomb was unsealed, Carnarvon sliced open a mosquito bite. It became infected and he fell ill. His condition deteriorated rapidly. He was moved to Cairo, but his health continued to fail. The public connected his sickness to the curse. As Carnarvon lay dying, the legend grew stronger. On April 5, 1923, Lord Carnarvon died. His death sent a shockwave around the world. He had disturbed the king's slumber and paid the ultimate price. The curse was real. The moment of Lord Carnarvon's death was accompanied by an event so strange, so eerily coincidental, that it cemented the curse legend in the public mind forever. At the very instant Carnarvon passed away in his hotel room, precisely 2 a.m., a massive power outage plunged the entire city of Cairo into complete darkness. The sudden citywide blackout was a shocking and inexplicable event. For those sitting vigil, the timing was supernatural. It was as if the ancient power that had claimed Carnarvon's life had also extinguished the lights of the modern world, a dramatic and symbolic display of its might. The story was reported with breathless excitement. It was a detail so perfect it seemed to come from the pages of a Gothic novel. How could a city's entire electrical grid fail at the exact moment of one man's death? The engineers at the Cairo power station had no immediate explanation. They could only confirm that a sudden, unexplained failure had occurred. For believers, no technical explanation was needed. It was the Pharaoh's final salute to his fallen victim, a moment of high drama orchestrated from beyond the grave. The darkness that fell over Cairo was seen as a shadow cast by the tomb itself, a tangible sign of its otherworldly power. As if that were not enough, another, even more personal story emerged from thousands of miles away in England. Back at Highclere Castle, the Carnarvon family's ancestral home, the Earl's favourite dog, a fox terrier named Susie, reportedly began to howl uncontrollably at the same time her master died in Cairo. After a few moments of this mournful, piercing cry, the dog suddenly dropped dead. The two events, separated by a continent, seemed inextricably linked. The tale of the loyal pet dying at the moment of its master's passing added a deeply personal and emotional layer to the supernatural tale. The curse, it seemed, could stretch its influence across vast distances. Of course, both these events have more rational explanations. The Cairo power grid in the 1920s was notoriously unreliable, and blackouts were not uncommon. The dog's death, while poignant, may have been a complete coincidence, or its timing slightly embellished in the telling for dramatic effect. But in the charged atmosphere of 1923, such rationalizations were swept aside. The combination of the Cairo blackout and the death of Susie the dog was simply too powerful. It was compelling, irrefutable evidence for millions that dark forces were at work. The legend of Tutankhamun's curse was now in full flight. Following Lord Carnarvon's death, the press watched the expedition with morbid fascination. Every misfortune was attributed to the Pharaoh's wrath. A cascade of calamities followed. The curse appeared to methodically pick off those who dared enter the tomb. George J. Gould, a friend of Carnarvon, visited the tomb and soon died of pneumonia. Prince Ali Kamel Fahmy Bey, photographed at the tomb, was murdered months later. Aubrey Herbert, Carnarvon's half-brother, died of blood poisoning after dental surgery. A pattern emerged. Anyone associated with the tomb seemed doomed. The curse seemed to stretch across the globe, reaching people who had merely touched the artifacts. One case was Sir Archibald Douglas Reed, a radiologist who X-rayed Tutankhamun's mummy. Within 3 weeks, he was dead. The public diagnosis: the curse. Another victim was Richard Bethel, Lord Carnarvon's secretary, who entered the tomb's antechamber. He was found dead in his bed. The circumstances were suspicious. Newspapers declared that the curse strikes again. His father, distressed by his son's death, reportedly threw himself from his apartment window. It was seen as powerful evidence of a multi-generational curse. The list of alleged victims grew, reinforcing the narrative of a supernatural force. Arthur Mace, from the Metropolitan Museum of Art, helped dismantle the tomb's doorway. He later complained of exhaustion and died in 1928. Captain Richard Adamson, a tomb guard, later committed suicide. The press obsessed over the curse, linking any tragedy to the excavation. By the end of the 1920s, over a dozen deaths were publicly linked to Tutankhamun's tomb. The world saw a clear pattern of retribution. The legend was established, but one question remained. Why hadn't the curse touched Howard Carter? The The story of Tutankhamun's curse was born in the clatter of newsrooms across the world. In the 1920s, mass media was dawning and sensational headlines sold papers. The tomb's discovery, plus a deadly curse, transformed it into an irresistible global phenomenon. It was a perfect storm of ancient mystery, fabulous wealth, sudden death, and supernatural horror. Lord Carnarvon's death ignited a media firestorm, turning whispers into a central plot. The exclusive deal with the Times inadvertently starved the rest of the world's press, forcing them to find other angles. The information vacuum was filled with supernatural speculation, reaching a wider audience. It became a piece of global folklore, shaped by writers and a world hungry for mystery. As the legend of the curse spread, it moved into popular culture. The curse became a brand, a symbol of ancient Egyptian mystery and danger. Advertisers used Egyptian motifs to sell products. Entertainment quickly capitalized on the public's obsession. The golden death mask of Tutankhamun became a symbol of the curse itself. This branding cemented an image of ancient Egypt in the minds of millions, an image that persists to this day. The media created a thrilling version of history. It was inevitable that the most powerful storytelling machine in the world, Hollywood, would seize upon the curse of Tutankhamun. The story had all the elements of a perfect cinematic thriller: an exotic location, hidden treasure, a forbidden tomb, and a supernatural avenger. The film industry, still in its relative youth, saw the enormous potential of this narrative. It took the stories being sensationalized in the newspapers and amplified them on the silver screen, giving the Pharaoh's curse a visual form that would terrify and captivate audiences for decades to come. Hollywood did not just report the legend, it perfected it, turning the mummy into a bona fide movie monster. The first and most influential film to emerge from this craze was The Mummy, released by Universal Pictures in 1932. The film starred the legendary horror actor Boris Karloff, who had already terrified audiences as Frankenstein's monster. In The Mummy, he played Imhotep, an ancient Egyptian priest who is accidentally brought back to life by a team of archaeologists. He then proceeds to hunt down the woman he believes is the reincarnation of his lost love, leaving a trail of death and terror in his wake. The film explicitly referenced the Tutankhamun discovery, tapping directly into the public's existing fear and fascination with the curse. Karloff's portrayal of the mummy was a cinematic masterpiece of horror. He was not a mindless, shambling monster, but a cunning, intelligent, and deeply malevolent being. His slow, deliberate movements and his burning, hypnotic eyes created an unforgettable screen villain. The film established all the classic tropes of the mummy movie genre: the reading of a forbidden ancient scroll, the curse that dooms the desecrators of the tomb, and the mummy's relentless, unstoppable pursuit of its victims. It took the disparate elements of the Tutankhamun curse legend, the mysterious deaths, the ancient warnings, the supernatural power, and wove them into a coherent and terrifying narrative that would be imitated for generations. The success of The Mummy spawned countless sequels, remakes, and imitations over the next century. The image of the bandaged, vengeful mummy became as iconic a monster as Dracula or the Wolfman. This cinematic legacy ensured that the idea of the Pharaoh's curse would never fade away. Long after the newspaper headlines had yellowed and the real-life protagonists had passed into history, the curse lived on in darkened cinemas and on late-night television. Hollywood had taken a media sensation and transformed it into an enduring modern myth, ensuring that the ghost of King Tut would continue to haunt the popular imagination forever. Stripped of sensationalism, the curse is likely coincidence. The human brain seeks patterns even where none exist. Tutankhamun's curse exemplifies this. Lord Carnarvon's death, primed by media, became the first data point in a terrifying pattern. Carnarvon was not a healthy man. A motoring accident left him with lung problems. A mosquito bite led to fatal blood poisoning and pneumonia. In the pre-antibiotic era, such infections were often fatal. Other events were likely dramatic coincidences, amplified by the press. The cascade of deaths is statistical probability and selective reporting. The real curse was coincidence, amplified by human psychology and confirmation bias. While coincidence explains much of the legend, scientists have also explored whether the tomb itself could have posed a genuine physical danger to those who entered it. A sealed environment, left undisturbed for over 3,000 years, could theoretically harbor harmful substances. One of the most prominent theories revolves around the idea of dormant pathogens, such as dangerous species of mold and bacteria. When the tomb was sealed, organic materials like food offerings, funeral flowers, wood, and even the mummy itself were placed inside. Over millennia, these materials would have decayed, providing a perfect breeding ground for microscopic organisms in the dark, still air. When Howard Carter first breached the sealed doorway, he and his team would have been the first to breathe this ancient trapped air. They would have inhaled dust containing spores from molds such as Aspergillus niger and Aspergillus flavus. These are common molds, but in high concentrations, they can be dangerous, especially to individuals with weakened immune systems or underlying respiratory conditions. Inhaling these spores can cause allergic reactions or lead to a serious lung infection called aspergillosis, which presents with symptoms, fever, cough, chest pain, that are very similar to pneumonia. This could provide a plausible medical explanation for the respiratory illnesses suffered by Lord Carnarvon and others. Beyond biological agents, some have speculated about chemical dangers. The ancient Egyptians were masters of preservation and used a variety of chemicals and resins in their mummification and funerary rituals. It is possible that some of these substances, or the gases they emitted over time, could have been toxic. Furthermore, the tomb contained the remains of bats, which would have left behind guano. Bat guano can harbor a fungus called Histoplasma capsulatum, which can cause a lung disease known as histoplasmosis if its spores are inhaled. These theories suggest that the tomb could have contained a cocktail of genuine, albeit natural, hazards. However, it is important to note that these scientific explanations remain largely speculative. While plausible, there is no definitive proof that any of the individuals who died were suffering from these specific fungal infections. Modern analysis of air samples from other similar tombs has not revealed pathogens in concentrations considered lethal. Most mainstream Egyptologists and medical experts believe that the risk from ancient microbes was likely very low. While the toxic tomb theory provides a fascinating scientific alternative to a supernatural curse, the evidence for it is not strong enough to account for the wide variety of deaths attributed to the pharaoh's wrath. The truth likely lies elsewhere. The greatest evidence against a deadly curse is the fate of Howard Carter. He was the first to peer into the antechamber and led the entire excavation. Carter meticulously handled every treasure. If the curse were real, Carter should have been its primary victim. Yet Carter lived another 16 years continuing his work. He dismissed the curse as foolish inventions. His long life rebutted the myth. The survival of Carter and others undermines the curse narrative. The famous death list of curse victims crumbles under scrutiny. It was a media creation, pieced together by tragedies remotely linked to Tutankhamun. Consider some key victims. Deaths attributed to the curse had more obvious explanations. A study found that those present at the tomb opening lived to a normal age. The curse is a myth, a testament to storytelling and fascination with the unknown. The treasures were real, but the curse was a phantom. So where does this leave us? The evidence is clear. The curse of Tutankhamun simply did not exist. Yet knowing this does not make the story any less powerful. The legend has survived for a century, and it will likely survive for centuries more. The reason for this is simple. The curse is a far better story than the truth. It speaks to our fascination with the unknown, our fear of death. Ultimately, the curse of Tutankhamun has become a permanent part of the king's story. It has, in a strange way, fulfilled the deepest wish of the ancient pharaohs, to achieve immortality. He is remembered as the master of the world's most famous curse. This enduring myth is perhaps the most unexpected and powerful treasure to have emerged from his long-lost tomb. The true treasure of Tutankhamun was not the curse, nor the gold, but the knowledge. For the first time, the world was given an almost complete undisturbed window into the life and death of a pharaoh. These objects tell us a story far more intricate and human than any curse. We even see the delicate funeral wreaths of flowers left by his young wife, allowing us to see them not as gods, but as human beings. It sparked a renewed global interest in ancient Egypt, inspiring new generations of scholars. In the end, the story of Tutankhamun's tomb is a powerful reminder of our quest for knowledge and our love of mystery.